Hey everybody, today we are not going to talk about or work on a projector. Rather, we are going to talk about and look at projector lamps. I've been wanting to do a series on this for a while. It's something I find interesting and hopefully will be helpful to people who need to buy a replacement projector lamp for their projector. Reason I even want to do this to begin with is after reading through my comments, I noticed there's a lot of people that buy a replacement lamp trying to solve their projector problem and end up going down a rabbit hole because the issue is their new replacement lamp. Their old lamp went bad. They bought a new one from Amazon or eBay or, the cheapest they could find on Google Shopping. They put it in their projector, and then if it's a DLP, it'll start to come on, the light will come up, and then boom, the projector shuts down and flashes a lamp light. Well, if you're the owner, you just put a new lamp in. Why are you worrying about the lamp light? Should be fine. It can't be the lamp, it's new. It must be something else. And you start taking things apart, pulling ballast, pulling main boards, changing capacitors, this and that. End of the day, it ends up being the lamp they bought isn't really the lamp they need. And not that it's the wrong lamp, but it's actually just not built right. There are tons and tons of lamps out there, all varying quality. Some of the cheap ones are fine. Some of the cheap ones, most of the cheap ones, inexpensive, are not fine. And I'm hoping in this series I can help you all understand why and what to look for. So to start with, we're going to look at a pair of RLC 100s. These go in a handful of ViewSonic projectors. I believe the OEM is Delta Electronics. They look a lot like BenQ lamps to me. So, and the insides of the projectors are pretty similar to BenQ and Optima. So I think they're probably Delta. So I decided to go online and order a pair of lamps. Both the same model, both drastically different priced. This one was $146.50, and this one was $79.99. It's a significant price difference between the two, especially since they both claim to have original bulb inside. And that's an important thing. There are only a handful of companies that actually make projector lamps. When you buy a projector, that lamp inside 9 times out of 10 was not made by the company you're buying the projector from. Okay, this is a BenQ lamp for a W1070. This is actually from an old video I did. I need to change the bulb in it so I can use this for testing. But this housing is identical in every way to the original. Uses the same bulb, who is made by Osram. It's a P-VIP 240 0.8 E20.9N. That means it's a 240 watt arc tube in there. The gap in the arc points is 0.8 millimeters, and the reflector style is an elliptical 20.9. I think that's the radius from the center of the arc tip to the outside is 20.9 millimeters. I still need to confirm that, but that's what I've found so far. There's 20.8, 20.6, 21.8. There's all different reflector sizes. Almost all projectors have an elliptical reflector. In the older days, the TVs had parabolic reflectors, so they would have a P instead of the E. But my point of all this is this lamp and the OEM are identical in every single way. The lens is the same, the vent shape is the same, bulb is the same, wire setup is the same. And these are probably half the price of an original. Lamps were a good source, or maybe still are a good source of income for projector manufacturers, which is probably why they're pretty adamant about telling you have to buy an OEM. There are some cases, though, where the aftermarket is not a good option, and that's kind of what I'm going to get into here. This claims to have an original bulb inside. This also claims to have an original bulb inside. And we're going to check them out and see why this one's $146.50 and why this one's $79.99, and why the $79.99 one is not remotely worth $79.99. And please pardon my voice, I'm getting over a cold or allergies or something, so I'm a little raspy. Let's see, let's start with packaging. This lamp, it's packaged pretty well. It gives you a little general instruction thing. I've looked over it. It's pretty generic, multiple languages, you know, locate the lamp from your projector and remove the lamp cover, loosen the screws. I mean, changing a projector lamp's not hard. So, well, nice. It's not really, you know, whatever. But this is what I like. We have some nice foam, heavy duty foam. It's got the cardboard back to help keep it rigid, and they use that to sandwich the lamp in between another piece. So this is what it would look like if we took the box off. And between me and you, that's nothing's going to happen to that in shipping. You could, in fact, you know what? Let's pretend it's UPS. Oh, and in fact, this came double boxed. This was wrapped in bubble wrap and then inside a larger box. So it was box suspended in a box. But just this box. And I'm not remotely concerned about that. That can handle that sort of handling without anything happening. This one I don't know so much, but we'll get to this next. Here, I'll just stick it out there. So let's get back inside and actually look at the lamp. Let's see if I did anything to it by tossing it against the wall a few times and onto the bench. Thin foam bag, but when you bunch it up, it does add some nice protection. And now, the lamp. Ta-da! So this lamp is the more expensive replacement. Like I said, $146.50. First thing I'm looking for is, are all the pieces intact? Do I have anything loose? You can hear the screw wobbling, and that's fine. The screw is captive. It's got a little washer holding it. I want to make sure that the vent is in place. This is critical. If you ever have a lamp that gets a burn in the middle of the lens, either your blower fan isn't working or this vent's not aimed properly. What that vent does two things. The upper part of the vent, which you can't really see, but I'll help. There you are. The upper part of the vent has that metal, which if I hold it straight, points at the tip of the arc tube. That keeps the tip of the arc tube cool. They get incredibly hot, and if they get too hot, they actually burn a little mark into the coating on the lens, and worst case can actually melt the glass. The second part of the vent down here channels air around the reflector. The air goes in and then circles around the reflector, and then all the air comes out here, and that helps keep the reflector cool and the arc tube cool, which are critical for long-term operation. Lamps all do that somehow, some way. That BenQ lamp I showed you, in fact, you can kind of see why I think BenQ and the ViewSonics are made by the same company. You know, the vents are almost identical in design. Even the fronts are very, very similar. And they're both using a E20. Well, this is a 20.6, I think, and that's a 20.9. It might be a 20.8, but they're similar. You can see they're quite similar. This is another BenQ, which is even more close. It has the wire hanging off and all that. So, anyway, before I get lost on myself again, let's get back to this. Now, actually, let's there we go. So I wanted to zoom in on this so we can really get into it. We're going to take both of these apart. So we're still on the $146, $146.50 lamp. And we're going to look at what type of bulb is in here. Now, this is a very important point. This is a top UHP Philips. The thing you want to look for is, where is it made? If it's been made in the past, I don't know, 6-7 years, maybe even 8 years, it will not say made in Belgium. They used to say made in Belgium. That's where Philips had a factory. Now, from what I know, the burners, the arc tubes inside, are still made there, but then they're shipped to China, where they're glued into the reflector and everything else. So they are technically, the working components are still made in the Netherlands, Belgium, something like that. Still made in Europe. Then sent to China for final assembly. The most important thing to look for, this will only be on a replacement lamp, whether it comes from the manufacturer, if it comes from the internet, if it comes from your buddy Biff, whatever. This bottom number, it has to start with AM. AM, this case 0067891, that's a batch number. AM means aftermarket. That means this bulb was sold to be a replacement for your projector. If there's no AM there, and you're not buying it from, well, if it's not, how do I put this? If there's no AM, and the lamp was not inside the projector when you bought it brand new, opened it up out of the box, all that, I mean the projector itself, there will have to be an AM. If there's no AM, that lamp had to have come out of a brand new projector. When you buy the projectors new, the lamp that's in them will not say AM on the bottom. I'm going to see if I actually have an OEM around that will show you where that AM is not there. All right, so here we go. Here's a perfect example. This lamp here is an OEM out of a projector. This is an original 5J J7 T05001. It's from an older unit. You can see it's got some heat marks on it from how long it ran. But you can see it's not too bad. And you can see it's actually very similar to this RLC 100. I'm sure this is very similar to a 5J something. If I ever find it, I'll let y'all know. But when we look at the bulb, you can see here, there's the batch number. It starts with 00. Reason that says samples, because this is for my library, so I can keep track of lamps. I put that sticker on there. But you can see AM, aftermarket. No AM, original. So that's critical to look for. Make sure if you buy a replacement lamp for your projector and it claims to have an original bulb inside, if it's a Philips, it has to have the AM. No AM, I don't know if it's a retube. Sometimes what folks will do is they'll actually replace the internals of the bulb. Here's an older Osram. The used Osram, it's all worn out in there. But what more unscrupulous folks will do is they will take these apart and somehow crack it open to separate the reflector from the back here. Then they will replace this arc tube with a no-name, non-branded arc tube, and then glue it all back together and sell it as new. Some of them look pretty good. Some of them look like they're real. This is an Osram, so I'm not really sure how to tell if it's a counterfeit or not, except for I don't know if we'll be able to get it on camera here, but if you look carefully, there's some numbers in the side of that arc tube. They should match the numbers on there. It's a serial number, so that should be the same as that. I guess it wouldn't be hard for a company who retubes these. That's what they call it, retubing or relamping sometimes. Relamping term's used in a couple places, so I'm going to use retube. But retubing these, occasionally they will try and match the serial number. But that's a good telltale sign. If you look in and there's no serial number, and there's one on here, probably a retube. But that's what they'll do for the Philips lamps. They'll get a used OEM, an old one, doesn't work anymore. They'll pull it apart, they put a new arc tube in, glue it back together, and then sell it as new. It already has the Philips logo on it, so they don't have to worry about doing that. Important thing to watch for. So let's start taking this apart and see what sort of construction we're dealing with and give us a baseline so when we compare to the $79.99 lamp, we can see why it's $79.99 and why it's not remotely worth buying, because it won't work. I can already tell you that that lamp, you put it in your projector is going to have problems the instant you turn it on. At some point I'll demonstrate inside a projector, but for now we're just going to look at lamps. Alright, so that comes apart. It's a little tricky the way the metal all clips in. Once you start to pull it apart, it just kind of falls apart. But that's okay. It's not something you'd have to worry about as the owner of the lamp. Then we have good quality metal here. It's not super thick, but it's not super thin. Definitely holds its shape. It has the same tabs that would lock it in to hold the housing together in the proper way. Set that out of the way. Then we'll look at the front some more. Get a much better view of the vents here. So again, this is the vent that cools the tip of the arc tube, and then this piece here circles the air around the inside of the reflector. And then that's the exhaust over there. That's where the air just goes out. Now the next thing with the housing we need to look at is this lens. And you can kind of see when I turn it a little, it's got something, that's the lights above me reflecting. But this is what they call an IR cut coating. See that red, kind of purplish red coating? Almost like a little bluish too underneath. That's a special coating that blocks the infrared light from flooding your color wheel. And that's the biggest problem with inexpensive lamps, is that this lens isn't coated properly. Some companies will do a clear lens, which does nothing, and other companies will do like this weird greenish coating that doesn't work. I'm trying to think of a good way to demonstrate the IR cut, IR block. I actually built a meter using a microcontroller and some sensors that puts out a set amount of infrared. Then I have a sensor that goes on the back side of the lens. It kind of sandwiches between them, and then it can measure the amount of cut. But that's not very interesting for you all to see. A bunch of numbers. What does it really mean? So instead, see, I have an Epson remote, and let's see if the battery's good. Okay, so you see how that light's flashing? You got that like purple flickering there? That's the infrared LED. So let's see, I'm going to leave it in here. No, I won't. Let me take the lens out, and then you can see front, and you'll be able to see the difference. Let me just get something to hold it so I don't get my fingerprints all over it. Here, we'll grab it on the corner. It's a pretty thick piece of glass too. You can really see the coating when I hold it at an angle. There's the blue, and there's the red. So, you see that little dot? That dot's supposed to be on the inside, I think. Wait a minute. Yeah, that's supposed to be on the inside. So, if I hold it on the edge, I should be all right. I'm still going to clean it off. So there you go. So now you see the light flashing. And you can see I'm still pushing the button. In fact, now you can see half of it flashing. So that blocks a large amount of the IR. I think on average it blocks, I think it was a factor of 100. My program that I use for testing these lenses doesn't measure, it measures in lux, and I seem to get 1,000 lux without, and then I get 100 lux maybe, or 10 lux rather, when I have a proper lens in between. So that's important. That lens is almost the most critical thing that causes so many problems with projectors, having an incorrect lens. I almost always default to that when people say, hey, I put a new lamp in and my color wheel or my projector shuts down after about a minute of it coming on. And that's a common thing because the lamp will go to full brightness. The infrared light then floods the color wheel sensor and the color wheel shuts down, turning off the lamp. The last thing we want to look at on this lamp is actually just the metal itself. What kind of metal is it? It's definitely some sort of mixture of aluminum and some other things. Zinc maybe. Probably not magnesium, but maybe. Some kind of, pot metal mix. But it's rated for high temperature. It's not a sintered, compressed thing. It's definitely melted and then injection molded. As are the OEMs. The OEMs use a slightly different metal. I don't know if there's a patent on the metal mix and that's why the aftermarkets don't use it. I do know that some of the lamps made by this company who makes these aftermarket lamps do use the same metal as the OEM. So if anybody knows how to identify this kind of metal, put it in the comments. I'd love to figure out how to learn that. There's no mold marks that I know of aside from this XOO or OOX, whatever that means. And then there's this stuff on the side with a date, I guess, but nothing about the metal. It's not like the plastic where you get the plat like PPS, GF40, all that stuff. So anyway, that's the other thing to look for. Some of the aftermarket, the cheaper aftermarket lamps, the ones I don't like, use this other kind of pot metal it's like this dark gray, and I've seen it actually bubble. The metal will actually, the air bubbles inside the metal will heat up and bubble the metal. The metal will actually, it's not this stuff, but, well, you'll see. We'll get there. So let me pack this up. Put all this stuff in here so that we can keep it apart and reference it against the other lamp. Let's set that off to the side. And now let's look at the other lamp. This was a lamp I paid $79.99 for. Not a bad price, not super cheap. I think they had a cheaper one that didn't claim to have any original stuff in it, and honestly, if a company is straight up about what they're selling, hey, it's a cheap, possibly junk lamp, all the power to them. But this one was advertised as a original inside, as you saw right there. The packaging. I meant to show the packaging. This is how it was packed. It was packed like that. One layer of bubble wrap, a plastic bag, and a cardboard box. So this was in a second box with some paper, brown paper, like not butcher paper, like paper bag paper, So, it got to me fine. It didn't get broken, but, if I spent $80 on something, I'd kind of expect it to be a little better packed. A little biased, of course, but, on first view, it doesn't look bad. It's let's see here. It says UHP on it, which is interesting. Doesn't say Phillips. Like I said, it's got the that's what you're going to see on these soon. But if you look carefully, or not carefully even, honestly, if you casually glance at it, it's pretty obvious there's no AM there. That's really fishy. I'm not going to call this counterfeit. I don't know for 100%. But, you know, infer what you will with the information I provide. Let's also look at the general construction. It's not bad. I mean, the metal pieces are there. They're in the right place. The wire connectors are snug. They're not, well, that one's kind of loose. Let's see how it compares to the other one. See, the other one has the extra insulation. When this is in your projector, you have to plug that in, and these do get exposed to heat. This is silicone wire. It will dry out and crack. I'd prefer to have this stuff on it, but again, it's not necessarily a deal breaker. But the terminals are way tighter on this one. Like, wow, I can't even pull that one off. They're not locked either. They're just on there well. That is a concern, because if you have a loose connector, what can happen is you can get an arc happening in between. If they're not tight enough, that minimal gap will let dirt and dust build up, and then you will get arcing, and this can burn off. I've seen it happen. It's rare, but it can happen. So that's kind of worrisome that comes off. And it's also curious that these have writing on them. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's writing on that one and that one. But that's fine. Let's put that back on and set the other bulb out of the way. The this doesn't have the markings, the heat, the warning labels that the other one did. It's not critical for operation though. Let's take the screws out and see what the inside looks like. I'll try and go through the same order that I did on the other one. I want to make sure we do a fair comparison. I want to make it clear that I don't want to talk bad about companies. A lot of the folks that sell these just don't know what they're selling. They're just trying to sell stuff. So they're not aware that, the bulbs might be counterfeit, or that the lamps aren't built right and all that stuff. Oh, actually I should have looked at the vent first. We'll do that now. There's that vent. Vent's important, like we discussed. This one doesn't neck down to direct the air directly at the tip of the arc tube. It's kind of wide. Let's compare to the other one. You can see it's very wide. It's going to blow air in, but it's not going to concentrate it on the arc tube. That will probably cause an early failure. The other vent, the one that blows into the reflector, just looks malformed. Oh, the assembler forgot to bend that tab. It should be, let's get some pinchy needle nose here. I can do this with my hands in front of the camera. Should be like that. Concentrating the air is pretty important, as is the angle. You can see this one's pushed down more. It really should be about here. But honestly, it doesn't matter, because this vent's no good. And the exhaust vent's fine. You really can't mess that up. Now we get to the lens. Let's do the little thing where I tilt it. Oh, there we go. See how it's green? That's that fake coating. I want to say it's like sputtered nickel or something like that. The other stuff's a mix of metals that they do electrical sputtering, kind of like when they coat eyeglasses, same idea. But this green coating, in my experience, is beyond substandard. It works maybe, I don't know, 10% of the time, and even then it doesn't work for very long. It usually cooks off, melts off the front. Let's see if visually we can see the difference between the other one. I know when I measure them with my little setup, They're much, much lower. They don't block nearly enough. All right, so we got that. All right, so that thing's barely blocking any IR whatsoever. Let's get the other lens. Oh, I put that back in. Well, here, we'll do it. See if I can hold it. Just want you guys to know, I want to keep everything in view so you don't think I'm doing anything silly. Let's get a little closer. All right. Nothing. And it is blinking. So it's, and you can kind of see it a little bit, but not like here. Like that's not blocking barely any IR at all. If you put this in your projector, as soon as the lamp goes to full brightness on startup, your projector is going to shut off and it's going to flash your lamp light. And then you're going to search on Google for the problem and most likely end up on one of my videos and post a comment saying, hey, I just replaced my lamp and the projector's still shutting down. What should I replace next? And inevitably, this is going to be one of my first questions is, does your lens have a red-blue coating? Or does it have the crappy green coating like that? So bad, good. Now the other thing we're going to look at is the metal. I don't know if this is the bad pot metal, but I know I've seen this stuff before. When it gets hot, it will get soft, it'll warp. I've seen these where they've bent, where it'll bend this way because it's in the projector like that, and then it'll bend down just a little right here. I have seen kind of it's like a green, like gray like this, but also kind of greenish. That's the stuff I've seen that definitely bubbles. This stuff might be fine. It's definitely injection molded. As we can see, they never cleaned the sprue off. But, you know, this is why it's only $79.99. I wonder, though, if they're paying the company who sells these, I wonder if the folks they're buying them from are pretending these are original Philips bulbs. I don't think it is. Here's the sticker on the side of the bulb. It's a 780/760, 190 watt, 160 watt, 0.9. It's got some other stuff on there, but no AM. These stickers, you can make these stickers yourselves. These are just ceramic labels. You can buy them. You can get rolls of them. They'll print on whatever you want. Let's look at this one, and we'll compare. So the projector, I believe, runs at 190 watt. This is a 210, but that means it'll actually run down to about 160. You get about 30 to 50 watt variance between the high and low end. So you can see it's an E20.9, 0.8. This one's using a 0.9. I have no idea what this bulb really is. I know what they're claiming, but, you know. So you can even kind of see, let's see, are these stickers the same length? Let me get my super expensive Harbor Freight micrometers that are like 15 years old that I lost the battery door for, and it's had the same piece of tape on it for 5 years. All right, so I'm getting say 25.8 on that one, and the same on that one. All right, so there's nothing really to tell between that, but I will say this is critical, having that AM when it's an aftermarket lamp. Again, the only lamps that will not have AM on them is if it's new in your projector. Like when you bought the projector, it was in there. Of course, this only applies to Philips. Doesn't apply to Osram or Ushio. So put that back with that. So I'm skeptical on this bulb, honestly. I suspect it's a counterfeit. I don't see... Oh, we do have a serial number on the bulb. I don't know if we can make it visible. So I actually stuffed some blue paper behind it, and it says 3322 and 9. So it's got nothing to do with that, and it's got nothing to do with anything on here. And the other thing, even the shape, if you look at the shape of the two arc tubes, you can see the front of the real Philips one just looks a little better. This one just looks different in the way the wire's bent, the wire to the tip, the way that's configured just isn't the same. I still won't come out and say definitely that it's a counterfeit, but I don't know. It doesn't look good to me. I wouldn't put it in my projector, and I wouldn't recommend you putting it in your projector. Let's see, we got some more marks here. It's got some stuff there. Yeah. So my suspicion, again, I'm just speculating, this is just me talking with what I see in front of me, is that this was retubed. The ceramic's a little dirty for a new lamp. You know, it's got some marks on it. That weird UHP stamp that I only see on new OEM in projectors. It doesn't even look even back. Like, you got weird gaps around it. Weird gap there, weird gap there. This one's just way more uniform around here. Little things like that you look for. And then, of course, the glaringly obvious things like the lack of AM there. So, let's put this one in this container. And we can see them side by side. Get that out of the way. Yeah, we'll get that in there. So, $146.50, $79.99. This one will most likely make your projector shut down, blink the lamplight, and make you think you have a bad color wheel or something like that. It also might short out and blow your ballast up. It might melt and get stuck inside. It also may not cool the bulb properly and burn a hole in the lens, also ruining your color wheel. But most likely it won't even get that far because of the coating. So there's a reason a decent projector lamp costs what it does. There's engineering, there's parts, there's a lot of things going on inside. It's not just a light bulb and a housing. So take all this into account next time you're buying a lamp. If you would like to buy this one, I'll put a link to where I got it from. I will not be putting a link to this one. I'm not going to mention the company. I don't want to advertise for them, but I also don't want to, cause trouble for them if they don't really know what's going on. Maybe they'll see this video and figure it out for themselves. But aside from that, if you have any questions about your lamp, put it in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching.